Hi friends, today we're talking about one of the most, if not the most, legendary heroes of the Imperium, the hero of Hive Hades, old Bale, the savior of Armageddon, Commissar Sebastian Yarrick. Woo! Commissar Yarrick is one of the most iconic Imperial Guard characters and the first one to ever get a proper model. He is a legend among the Imperials and the Orcs, an inspirational leader, and a total badass all around. It all started on a planet called Teos 3 when a little guy called Sebastian Vardine was born. He was born to a wealthy family but was orphaned at a young age, and unlike Harry Potter, his family fortune got taken by the government, so he couldn't buy whimsical little candies and owls. Instead, this little guy was raised by his grandpa Yarrick, who was a disgraced Imperial hero of the Guard. Grandpa Yarrick was a really nice guy who would pay some thugs to beat up Baz every week so that he would eventually ask for training and stop being a little weenie boy. And it worked! So he brutally taught young Baz combat, survival, and tactical skills to prepare him for the horrors of the galaxy, which would coincidentally come in handy when the Orcs invaded Teos 3 and killed everybody that Sebastian knew, including his nice old grandpa. But little Baz wouldn't go down so easily, so he made hideouts throughout the Hive and used his skills that he learned from his grandpa to survive the Orc invasion for 3 whole years. This insano home alone orcs for 3 years by himself while surviving in a wrecked Hive. At least Macaulay Culkin had a giant house and some playboys. But anyways, after those 3 years, the Imperial Retribution fleet finally arrived and discovered little Sebastian. When discovered, Sebastian took on his grandpa's name to honor him, and thus began the legend of Sebastian Yarrick. Impressed by his survival skills, the commissar who found him sent him to the Scala Progenium, which, also luckily for him, the Scala loves orphans more than Disney and Bruce Wayne combined, so at the Scala, Yarrick would be trained to be an Imperial Stormtrooper, which really makes it no wonder that he'd become the coolest dude ever someday. But anyways, after some time serving as a Tempestus Scion, Yarrick would be placed under the mentorship of Lord Commissar Rasp to train to become a Commissar himself. And he would eventually become a Commissar and lead a relatively unremarkable career, eventually being attached to the Steel Legion Regiment and working with Armageddon PDF as his career came to a close. Notably, though, through his career, he harbored a hatred for the Orcs due to his childhood encounter with them, and he would learn as much as he could about their culture and even learn the Orcish language. But anyways, on the day of his retirement, the first Orcs of a looming Wah arrived on Armageddon. But luckily, instead of tragically dying before he was able to retire, Yarrick would forge his legend with the ensuing Second War of Armageddon. Upon hearing word of the incoming Orc invasion and the actions of Ghazghkull Mag Uruk Thraka, Yarrick would know from his experience with Orcs that Ghazghkull was smarter than the average Orc and could potentially lead an apocalyptic assault on the world. Or, in other words, bring Armageddon to Armageddon. So he called for an astropathic SOS, but the famously smooth-brained Herman von Straub, overlord of Armageddon, was confident that Armageddon could hold its own against the Orc threat, and he banished Yarrick to Hive Hades for not respecting him enough. And this unshockingly proved to be a certified moron moment, as almost all of Armageddon fell to the Orcs in record time. Only Hive Hades stood as Yarrick had shaped the Guardsmen and the Hivers into a formidable defense force and turned the Hive into a fortress city in preparation of the Orc menace. And this is where Yarrick truly became a legend. At Hive Hades, Yarrick would lead from the front, belting out rousing speeches and performing daring acts of heroism in order to inspire his men to hold the line against the Green Tide. He was such a brilliant and inspiring leader that it's said that no guardsman broke morale during the entire defense of Hive Hades. And despite being a mega old man and being vastly outnumbered and outgunned, Yarrick slew all the Orcs who challenged the Hive with bolter and chainsword. Yarrick was such a ferocious fighter that the Orcs began to fear the old man and told legends of an unkillable Hume who shined fire from his face and stole strength from death. So, as the rumors and tall tales spread among the Orcs, Ghazghkull would send his toughest war boss, Ugelhard, to slay the troublesome Hume and kill his legend and his Hive. The massive war boss killed his way towards Yarrick and faced him in a legendary duel. After trading blows and losing an arm, Yarrick found an opening and decapitated the raging beast. In his triumph, he raised the claw of the slain war boss high in the sky, emboldening his men and causing the remaining orcs to flee in terror. And this was an absolutely insane feat. Not only was Yarrick a regular human, but he was also literally over 100 years old. Being able to defeat one of the strongest war bosses in single combat is incredible when war bosses are the strongest orcs and can pretty easily kill space marines and other big threats. And Yarrick, perhaps more than any other Imperial, understood the orc culture and mindset. He understood the power of belief and legend, both in orcs and the Imperium. So he allowed himself to become the monster that the orcs believed him to be, and the rumors became reality as Yarrick fully embodied the myth. Yarrick had the orc claw fitted in place of his lost arm, still in the strength of a war boss. He got a cybernetic laser eye so he could literally kill with a glance, and he got a storm bolter, one of the biggest shooters he could, to unleash a rain of death upon all who opposed him. Yarrick would defend the hive until Imperial reinforcements finally arrived to beat the orcs back. He even survived a face-to-face fight with Ghazghkull himself. And after the war, he was celebrated as the savior of Armageddon as his stalwart defense was critical in the Imperial reinforcements arriving to reclaim the planet from the orcs. Yarrick was now one of the greatest heroes of the Imperium, and his feats were told across the Imperium to inspire other Imperials. A living legend, Yarrick denied any promotions or honorary positions in order to prepare for another encounter with Ghazghkull. And 3 years after the war, Yarrick prepared his forces to hunt down the Prophet. Concluding his hunt, he would face a large orc force on Golgotha, which would eventually lead to his capture. And after a failed slave revolt, Yarrick was adorned in his gear and brought before Ghazghkull. And in an unexpected move, Ghazghkull allowed him to go free to prepare for his second invasion of Armageddon because he respected the legendary Commissar and proclaimed, "Good enemies is hard to come by." And a formidable foe like Yarrick would make the battle more fun. And so, Yarrick was made supreme commander of Armageddon and led his force against Ghazghkull's green tide from his personal Baneblade, the Fortress of Arrogance. And the third war for Armageddon was even bigger and more insano than the second. Yarrick's mere presence would strike fear in the orcs, and his brilliant command would hold off the endless hordes long enough for Ghazghkull to get bored and leave the planet. And after the war, Yarrick would immediately hunt down Ghazghkull with the Steel Legionaries and High Marshal Helbrecht's Crusader fleet. And they were able to eventually find the war boss, but he was able to escape into the warp, preparing for another great war. And that was the last Yarrick was ever heard of. Until the super totally cool and awesome 9th edition Guard update that I totally love. The legend had finally returned, and he got one page saying that he died. They didn't say how or anything. No glorious fights with Ghazghkull. No heroic last stand. Not even a fun little office retirement party. One of the greatest Imperial heroes and most iconic 40k characters just written off in a single page. Yay. I mean, at least he got a page before disappearing, I guess. But they do leave it somewhat vague, so it's a possibility that they have plans for the future. I think Yarrick coming back at some point as a Imperial spirit or something would be kind of hokey, and I think that Ghazghkull hunting down Angron for killing Yarrick, I think that theory is just super dumb. Imperial records are famously misinformed, though, and this wouldn't be the first time a legendary Commissar was falsely reported dead, and even though they seemingly have his skeleton, that could also just be a ceremonial double if he was, like, missing or something. And also, like, don't come at me with the, it's realistic for an old man to die, or unceremonious deaths are realistic in war. Warhammer isn't a fucking history book, you know? Realism doesn't matter if it steps on the toes of a satisfying narrative. Stories are inherently unrealistic, and plots are made to be entertaining tales first and foremost. Yarrick dying with no explanation doesn't add anything significant to his narrative, and if they really wanted to shelve him, like a vague passage about how he's missing, but there's rumors of a warrior fighting across the galaxy with a burning eye or something, I think that would do that, and it would also fit his narrative and themes of legends and symbols, you know? But again, there is certainly a chance that they have further plans, so I wouldn't be too wound up yet, and it is written in a way that allows for you to headcanon a ton of things, which is kind of nice. But also, fake out deaths in fiction are some of the most annoying tropes ever to me, so I really hope it's not just that and it wasn't just a cheap setup for a surprise return. But anyways, back to Alive Yarrick. Yarrick, beyond being a total badass, is, in a way, the most idealized version of a commissar. People often forget it, but commissar's primary duty is to ensure loyalty, morale, and discipline is present among guard regiments, as well as being inspirational warriors. Their job is not to blast guardsmen for the funsies. And Yarrick does this duty perfectly. At his peak, Yarrick is able to inspire his men, raise morale, and guarantee loyalty just by being a total badass. Like, why would you defy the Emperor when the most badass dude in the entire world is giving his all to fight for the Emperor's glory? Oftentimes, Yarrick doesn't even need to shoot his own men, as his heroism is far more encouraging than a friendly fire incident. He also fully understands how to weaponize faith, and his impassioned words alone are a force multiplier in and of itself. Plus, he has a goddamn laser eye, crab claw, and Terminator gun. You'd be a moron not to respect his presence. And beyond being the perfect commissar, he's also basically the perfect enemy to the orcs. He understands orc culture and the power of their superstition very well, and he totally plays into that. He became the boogeyman that the orcs believed he was, and he was all the more threatening for it. Along with his outward badassery, there is an air of silliness to Yarrick. Who else but Yarrick would hear orc tall tales and say, okay, yeah, sure, I could do that, and get a gosh darn laser death eye? I'd bet if the orcs thought that Yarrick had an impenetrable Hawaiian shirt of doom, you'd find Yarrick at the local Tommy Bahama preparing to kill some greenskins. Knowingly or not, Yarrick does kind of tap into the orc psychic gestalt, and to what extent is unknown, but it's undeniable that Yarrick is one of the most accomplished and formidable humans in the entire setting. The mere fact that he, as an ordinary guy, is largely considered by the orcs as an equal to the literal prophet of the wall, Gaskell Mag Uruk-Thraka, should speak for itself. But yeah, that was Yarrick, one of the greatest, if not the greatest, heroes of the Imperium. And as a massive Imperial Guard simp, Yarrick is of course one of my favorite characters. I like Kane a little bit more, but Yarrick's sheer badassery cannot be overlooked. Plus, he has a laser eye and orc power claw. Coolest shit ever! One of my biggest regrets is not picking up the classic Yarrick model at my local store when they had him. I love the latest model of him, but the crab claw and banner are just so fun. I would have loved to paint it. I'm sure I'll get it one day, but I gotta find a good deal. But anyways, let me know what you think about Yarrick, and of the 3 big commissars, who's your favorite? Be sure to comment your thoughts below and whatever else you have to say about Yarrick. Anyways, thank you for watching, and big thanks to the patrons who help support the channel. You're all very epic. And as always, please like, comment, subscribe, and consider sharing to all your super duper mega badass commissars. Thanks. People wanted Cherry to return, but like, he's stuck in Comra, guys. We need to send someone to save him or something.